Hi, hello, welcome to Vital Biology. This is Padma. In this video, we will continue the chapter Breathing and Exchange of Gases. So, in a previous class, we have discussed the definition of breathing and how respiration helpful to the organisms and how in a various animal groups, different types of respiratory organs are present and how the mechanisms are also vary from one group to the another group based on the habitat and as well as the levels of organization. And in this class especially we'll focus on how exactly air from the atmosphere reaches to the lungs and how this carbon dioxide rich air again it leaves the lungs and reaches to the external environment. So this entire respiratory passage here in this class we will study. So let's start with our class. Yes, in the case of the respiratory system, yes, we said that from the atmosphere continuously the air should reaches to the lungs. Yes, and for that the inhalation process is helpful. Yes, whenever we'll focus on this breathing process, the main two important steps, one is the inhalation and another one is the exhalation. So inhalation means like taking off air from the atmosphere into the lungs, and exhalation means expelling or releasing of the air from lungs towards the outside. So during this inhalation and the exhalation, air from the atmosphere to the lungs and from the lungs to the external environment. So whatever these gases are moving, so that pathway here we are going to study. So that pathway or the passage of these respiratory gases here, those will travel through all these parts. Okay, so the first one if we will see, yes, whenever we will discuss about this inhalation or the exhalation, the main part which is in contact with the external environment, so that is our nose. And here this nose contains a pair of external nostrils. Okay, it contains a pair of external nostrils. Okay, so these here you can see in this diagram, here we can see only one of the nostril at one side. Okay, so one of the nostril on one side and another side one more nostril. So a pair of nostrils. Nostrils are nothing but small openings. Okay, small openings at the lower end of our nose. So that helps in the movement of air from the atmosphere into our body. So those two small pores are called as the nostrils, and these are present towards the outside. So that's why these are the external nostrils. Okay, external nostrils. And these external nostrils will leads to a small cavities or the chambers which are present in our nose. Yes, here you can see that in our nose, at the center, we can feel one of a cartilaginous bone which is a nasal septum. So this nasal septum is actually dividing our nose into two of the chambers. Okay, so one is towards the left side, another one is towards the right side. So like this, two of the nasal chambers. So here the small openings, those external nostrils open into the furthermore part, that is nothing but the nasal chambers. Okay, so here you can see these nasal chambers are also called as nasal cavities. Okay, so like this, from the external nostrils, air enters into the nasal cavity or otherwise nasal chamber. Okay, and from those nasal chambers, the next passage which is present, so that is the pharynx region. Okay, one of a small tube that is called as pharynx, and pharynx open into the larynx. Okay, pharynx open into larynx, and this larynx opens into the one more tube that is called as the trachea. Okay, trachea or otherwise windpipe. Trachea or otherwise windpipe. So once again see, nostrils a pair, open into nasal chambers, further open into pharynx, then into larynx, then into the trachea. Okay, so like this. So this is the trachea, and this trachea further, okay, so like this trachea further divide into, further we can see it is dividing into two of the branches. So this is one side, that is of the left bronchi, another one is the right bronchi. Okay, trachea divides into two of the branches. Each of the branch is called as the bronchi. So the bronchi which is going into that is of the left lung, that is called as the left bronchi, and the bronchi which opens into the right lung. Okay, so that is of the right bronchi. So like this, left and as well as the right bronchi. Here we can observe. So trachea open into the bronchi. So these are the first branches. Okay, so these are the first branches. So that's why these are called as the primary bronchi. Okay, primary bronchi. And here bronchi actually indicates the plural. So here together, if these two of the bronchi, two of the structures, two of the branches, when we are saying, yes, definitely we use the word bronchi. Suppose if we want to just describe about the one side, one of the branch, then it is called as the bronchus. Okay, bronchus. So bronchus. So bronchus is the singular, whereas the bronchi is the plural. Okay. Suppose if we want to discuss about only one of the branch, that is of suppose left. So left bronchus, or otherwise right bronchus. But together when we'll say left and right bronchi. Okay. So in this way, singular bronchus, whereas the plural, that is of the bronchi. Now, so these primary bronchi, further they will divide into secondary bronchi. Okay. They will further divide into secondary bronchi. And they further divide into tertiary bronchi. See, this is like if you observe a tree. So when that main stem divides into branches, so the one of a main branch again further divides into further more sub branches. So like that, the same way here we can imagine these small tubes which we said, yes, bronchi. They are dividing in such a way that initially they are just the primary, which further divided into secondary, then into the tertiary bronchi. And these bronchi further they branch into tiny tubes which are called as bronchioles. Okay, bronchioles. So here you can see tertiary bronchi which open into further tiny branches which are called as the bronchioles. Okay, the tiny branches are called as bronchioles. These are also again primary, secondary and tertiary. Okay, primary bronchioles, secondary bronchioles and the tertiary bronchioles. So this is a simple thing. The branches, whatever it is, suppose bronchi are considered as the main branches. So in those main branches, first level, second level, third level. So that's why primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. And in this tertiary, again further tiny branches are going to form, and those tiny one are called as bronchioles, and in which again first, second and third level. So that's why primary bronchioles, secondary bronchioles and the tertiary bronchioles. And these tertiary bronchioles furthermore divides into till tiny branches which are called as the terminal bronchioles. Okay, terminal bronchioles. And these terminal bronchioles further they'll open into alveolar duct. Okay, they open into alveolar duct. And those alveolar duct open into a small sac-like structures which are called as the alveoli. Okay, alveoli. So the tertiary bronchiole further divides to form terminal bronchioles which open into a small duct called as the alveolar duct, which further open into one of a sac-like structure which are called as alveoli. And here also, if we will describing about a single structure, then the word is the alveolus. Okay, alveolus. Suppose this is the alveolar duct, and here whatever we'll say, the sac or a bag-like structure. So that single structure is called as alveolus. Suppose here we are describing the numerous or the many of these bag or sac-like structures, then the word which we will use, that is alveoli. Alveoli. Okay, singular word is the alveolus. For plural, we use alveoli. Okay, so this is how the air from the external environment, it reaches into the lungs. And again, once the exchange got finished in this region, again it takes the carbon dioxide rich air and again it sends it towards the outside. Means here you can see it's a passage. This is the common passage of air may be of inhaled or otherwise exhaled, but the direction is of different, that is of opposite direction. Inhaled air way or a pathway is in this direction, that is from the nostrils to up to the alveoli. But suppose if it is of the exhaled air we are talking, yes, then the direction is in this reverse direction, that is from the alveoli to the external nostrils. So this is how the respiratory passage helps in movement of air from outside environment to inside environment. That is, inside environment means into our lungs. And again, from that exchange, whatever the carbon dioxide it will get, the carbon dioxide rich air, again it is sending towards the outside through the exhalation. So whether it is of inhalation or the exhalation, the passage or the pathway involves these various parts. Okay. So here once again the same parts once again see. The first one, external nostrils, nasal chambers, pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, then primary bronchioles, then into the secondary bronchioles, tertiary bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, alveolar duct, and then into the alveoli. So that is the passage. So from this particular passage also you can get the MCQ. So they may like change the parts in this pathway and they may ask you to identify the correct pathway. Okay. So this is the way they may ask the question from this particular part. Next. So in this particular pathway or the respiratory passage, yes, for each and every particular part, they do have some of the specific characters. Okay. So we are going to discuss those specific characters which they have mentioned in our NCERT book. So let's start this. So here you can see a pair of external nostrils. So where do these external nostrils are present? Just here they open out above the upper lip. So here in our mouth, the lower lip and the upper lip. So just above the upper lip, here two of the openings are present. So that's why position here it is very important. These nostrils open out. Okay. So these nostrils open out above the upper lip. Okay. So in our book, in our textbook, they have mentioned about these nostrils, the location they have mentioned. Okay. So the location is they just open out above the upper lip. Above the upper lip. Next. So these external nostrils open into the nasal cavity or otherwise nasal chamber. Both are same. Nasal cavity or also can be called as nasal chamber. And this nasal chamber further open into the pharynx. And for pharynx, one of a specific character is, yes, when we will study the digestive system, in that also, in that digestive passage also, we will study the pharynx. That means, this pharynx involves in passage of the food material and as well as the passage of respiratory gases. That is why pharynx is considered as a common pathway for food and as well as the air. Okay. Pharynx is a common passage for food and as well as the air. So that is what here also they told. Common passage for food and air. Now this pharynx open into the larynx and then into the trachea. So when this pharynx open into the trachea through this larynx, okay, through this larynx, near that region, near that laryngeal region, it is provided with one of a opening called as the glottis. So glottis is situated somewhat near the larynx region. So what is this larynx means? This is actually one of a cartilaginous box which is able to produce the sound. Okay. So larynx is, that is why considered as it is a sound box because it produces sound. So when here I am speaking, yes, so we are able to speak. So that voice production, that is because of this particular larynx. So that's why larynx is called as the sound box. Larynx is sound box. And near this larynx region, one of a opening is present, that is of a glottis. And this glottis is covered by one of a cartilaginous flap. Flap means nothing but a covering. Okay, so just imagine one of a small opening is present, which is covered by one lid. Okay, so that lid or a flap is made up of cartilage. And that lid is here nothing but the epiglottis. Okay, epiglottis. Epiglottis. Okay, so here epiglottis means nothing but a flap, a lid which is covering the glottis. Okay, and the main function of this epiglottis is actually it prevents the entry of food into the larynx. So when we'll take the food material, as we said, pharynx is the common passage. So when we take the food material, when the food is passing through the pharynx, chances are there that the food, instead of going into the food pipe, that is esophagus, it may enter into the trachea, or otherwise first into the larynx, then into the trachea. So that's why this epiglottis, okay, epiglottis, which is covering the glottis, and that glottis location is near the larynx region, okay, near the larynx. So that's why when this epiglottis is covering the glottis, it doesn't allow the food to enter from the pharynx to larynx and furthermore into the trachea. Okay, so here a specific word we have to focus, that is epiglottis. So this epiglottis is preventing the entry of food material from pharynx to larynx, from pharynx to larynx. Okay, so epiglottis is covering the opening, that is glottis. So that is about this particular structure. Next, so this larynx open into the one more straight tube that is called as the trachea. Okay, trachea or otherwise windpipe. So larynx open into the windpipe, that is the trachea. So trachea is just a straight tube. Okay, it's just a straight tube. So it is just a straight tube, and it extends up to the mid thoracic cavity. Okay, so the trachea, when it is passing like this, it will extend up to the mid thoracic cavity. Means just imagine, as this is our head region, this is the neck part, and this is our body, and this body is actually divided into two main parts. Okay, so this part is called as the thoracic part, and generally this is called as our abdomen. Okay, so now what they are saying is, so when the trachea is coming, it moves up to the middle region, okay, somewhat at the middle region of this entire thoracic cavity, and in that mid thoracic region, it is going to divide into two branches. Okay, near that mid thoracic region, that straight tube which is called as trachea, now it divides into two of the branches which are called as the primary bronchi. Towards the left bronchi, towards the right bronchi. Okay, next. That trachea open into like a primary, secondary, tertiary bronchi, and further they divide into primary, secondary and tertiary and then terminal bronchioles. Yes, which we have discussed earlier. So now here you can see that. So here related to that they gave some information. So here you can see, in the case of this trachea, okay, the parts, whatever the character here we are going to discuss, okay, so that is presence of some of the incomplete cartilaginous rings, or otherwise called as the C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Okay, so these C-shaped cartilaginous rings or incomplete cartilaginous rings are actually present in trachea, and even in the case of the primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary, primary bronchioles, and as well as the secondary bronchioles. Okay, so now in NCERT textbook they have mentioned clearly that these cartilaginous rings are present in trachea, primary, secondary and tertiary bronchi they told, and instead of giving this primary and the secondary bronchioles, they told as these cartilaginous rings even present in the initial bronchioles. Okay, the term they used in the book, in our textbook, that is initial bronchioles, but not specifically as primary and the secondary. Okay, so initial bronchioles means generally we have to think that these two, okay, but not the tertiary and the terminal bronchioles. Okay, so in these all regions, yes, definitely here we can see these cartilaginous rings. Okay, here you can see the cartilaginous rings, so which are not complete circle. half circle. That's why they are called as the incomplete cartilaginous rings, or otherwise we'll say C-shaped, okay, C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Okay, so that is about these cartilaginous rings position. Then these secondary bronchioles, further they'll open into tertiary bronchioles and then terminal bronchioles and then into the sac-like structure which are called as the alveoli. Okay, alveoli. And in our textbook again, for this alveoli, they gave some description. So that description is, so here suppose if this is our alveoli, okay, the sac-like structure. So these sac-like structures are very thin, okay. They don't have thick walls. They just have very thin walls and irregularly walled. They are not like a very smooth lining they possess, but they are irregularly walled and vascularized. Vascularized means already we know that any of the structure when it is richly supplied with blood vessels, yes, it is considered as a vascularized. So yes, here number of blood vessels are actually supplied in these walls. So that's why here they told vascularized, bag-like, as it is a somewhat expanded broad space it is provided with. That's why yes, it is a bag-like structure. Okay, so alveoli they have described as very thin, irregular walled and vascularized bag-like structures. Okay, as we know that in our MCQs, they are asking like a true and false about various statements. Okay, so in those statements when they will give, chances are there that they may use such type of the characteristic features. So that's why yes, definitely we have to focus on the description of such type of the structures. Okay, so thin, irregularly walled, vascularized, bag-like structures are nothing but here alveoli. Okay, alveoli. So this is what about our respiratory passage. Okay, respiratory passage. And here one more thing which we have left, that is about the trachea. So that is, see here we said the trachea is run up to the mid-thoracic region. Okay, in the thoracic region up to the mid position actually it will travels. But exactly where they are dividing, that position they have mentioned like in relation with the vertebral column. They said that they divide, okay, these trachea, this trachea is going to divide into two of the bronchi at the level of 5th thoracic vertebrae. Okay, 5th thoracic vertebrae. So in our backbone, that is of vertebral column, near the neck, that is called as the cervical vertebrae, and opposite to just thoracic, that is of thoracic vertebrae, and just opposite to this back of the abdomen, those are considered as the lumbar, and just below to that, that is of the sacral. Okay, in this way the bones are the vertebrae which are present in our vertebral column. Based on various parts concerned, they have divided in such a manner as cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, like that. So in this thoracic vertebrae, actually 12 thoracic vertebrae are actually present in us, and in those 12 thoracic vertebrae, this trachea is dividing at the level of 5th thoracic vertebrae. Okay, 5th thoracic vertebrae region actually towards the ventral region, this particular trachea is dividing and forming two of the branches which are called as the primary bronchi. Okay. Yes, next step. Going towards the lungs. Okay, number they have mentioned, and the membranes which are covering the lungs also they have mentioned. So these are the some of the important points related to lungs. Yes, those characteristic features now we will discuss. So here you can see that number wise there are total 2 in number. Okay, how many lungs are present in us means, yes, definitely we can say that 2 lungs. Okay, so one towards the left side, another one is towards the right side in our thoracic cavity. And these lungs are actually, okay, these lungs are covered by a 2-layered membrane. So here you can see covering. So covering of lungs, it is a double-layered membrane. So 2 membranes together, they are forming one of a membrane. So that is actually called as the pleural membrane. So here you can see outermost and as well as the innermost. okay, outermost and as well as the innermost. So here this is the black color lining which is covering the lungs, that can be considered as the outermost covering, whereas the violet which we have indicated, so that is as the innermost line. Still I'll zoom this picture. Yes, see here, outermost and the innermost. So these are the two-layered membrane, and that membrane is called as the pleural membrane. Okay, pleura. So here you can see that in our body, every vital organ is covered by specific membranes, like in the case of the heart, pericardium, whereas in the case of the brain, meninges. Like that, here in lungs, the lungs are covered by one of a two-layered membrane. So that means the membrane is having two of the like layers. That's why two-layered membrane, and that two-layered membrane is described as pleura. Okay, pleura, outermost, innermost. Okay, now between those two membranes we can see one of a fluid is present. Okay, between two of the membranes, that is the outer pleura and the inner pleura. Here in this picture we have represented with the yellow color. So yellow color is representing the fluid. Okay, a fluid which is present between these two membranes, and that fluid is called as the pleural fluid. Okay, it is called as the pleural fluid. Simple thing, membrane is the pleura and the fluid is the pleural fluid, as it is present between the two of the layers of the pleural membrane. That is why it is considered as that is pleural fluid. Okay, what is the use of this pleural fluid? So function wise, if we will see, yes, it reduces the friction on the lung surface. Okay, it reduces the friction on the lung surface. Means, as we know that now previously also we have discussed, during this inhalation and the exhalation, yes, these lungs are showing some sort of movements. Okay, they are actually like increasing their volume and as well as decreasing. So during that expansion and all this relaxation process, chances are there that they may have the friction. Okay, so to avoid that friction, this pleural fluid is actually helpful. Okay, so that's why they said reduces the friction on the lung surface. Okay, now continuously when it is like showing such type of the movements, yes, chances are there that it may undergo the friction. Okay, so that's why to avoid that, it is provided with this pleura which act like a cushion and avoiding this friction process. Next, position wise, they gave some description about this pleural membrane, which we said outer and the inner. So generally, this outer pleural membrane is in close contact with the thoracic lining. See here you can see. Okay, so here you can see what they are saying is, here we said pleura is the outer and the inner. So black is the outer, whereas the inner is the violet color. Okay, so here you can see they are saying that the outer pleural membrane is in close contact with the thoracic lining. See here, this is our thoracic region. Yes, this is all our thoracic region. Yes, this is the thoracic region. So yes, definitely this outermost is maximum, it is in contact with the close contact with this whatever the thoracic wall. Okay, whereas inner membrane, the inner pleural membrane is in direct contact with the lung surface. So here you can see in this picture. Yes, so this this violet color. So this violet color actually membrane is covering the lung. So this is the lung. Yes, this is. So here you can see this is the lung, and this innermost covering is actually covering this particular lung part. Okay, so that is a way how they are exactly describing the position. Okay, position of the outermost and as well as the innermost. So outer pleural membrane is in close contact with the thoracic lining, whereas the inner one is the in contact with the lung surface. That is the one. Okay, so this is about the respiratory passages and the membranes of the lung and as well as the fluid which is present between that, and how they have a close contact with this thoracic and the lung surfaces.